better get caught up in your important reading. School starts next week. Where's Eric?
Who?
Who? Who do you think I mean? Larry Bertie or Dr. J?
Oh, he went out.
Out where? James Eugene Redland, where did he go?
He made me promise not to tell you.
Now, you listen to me, young man. You better tell me where he went right now. You understand me?
Eric? Hi, Mrs. Lucas. Can I come in?
Look, the main thing to remember here is just to remain calm and collected. You can bet that your father's attorney is going to continue to hit hard and low. We've seen it before with Babs. Hey, you too, Ione. He's probably going to do everything he can to make you and your testimony look foolish.
Well, now, don't you worry about me, Mr. Webster. I can take care of myself.
Oh, I know you can. I know you can. I just want you to be sure you choose your words carefully. Try not to make any statements that he can rip into. If he does manage to turn your words around, don't let him see that you're upset. Just sit tight. Give me a chance to get in there and redirect. I'll try to repair whatever damage he might do.
Harold, you're making me nervous.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miriam. I don't mean to do that. This judge, by the end of this day, is going to have an accurate picture of a woman who's changed and ready to assume her responsibility. You can count on that.
Oh, good. I was afraid I couldn't find you.
Yeah, this is it. I'm glad you're here. Have a seat.
Okay, thanks. Terry, I really appreciate you doing this for me. Thank you.
What are friends for?
Did Ben and Alex come with you?
They should be around about 20 minutes or so.
Yeah. Yeah, that ought to be enough time. The order I'm going to call you in is Ione first, and then Terry, and then Ben and Alex.
Which leaves me for the grand finale, I guess.
That's right.
Morning, ladies. Counselor.
Good morning. That's funny.
What is?
Notice anybody missing?
Yeah, my father.
The one and only. I wonder what that means.
Well, he probably just got stuck in traffic.
Yeah, probably. Well, let's not make the same mistake and make a bad impression on Judge Sawyer. Why don't we go on inside? Come with me, Miriam. And we'll be ready. Ladies, I'll be calling you in just a little while. It won't take too long.
Okay.
I'm not fooling with you, young man. Now, where did he go?
Mom, I promised not to tell.
Oh, well, I can make a few promises of my own. You want to hear them?
No.
Well, let's see. No bike? No TV? No more quarters for the video games at Fast Eddie's?
Well, that isn't fair. You told me once a promise is a promise.
Right. But I also told you to know when to make them and when not to.
It's a little too late to take it back.
Now, Jimmy, I'm responsible for Eric. If anything's
Nothing's gonna happen to him, Mom. He's someplace safe.
You're not going to tell me, are you?
I can't.
Now, you're going to suffer the consequences. You realize that, don't you?
Yes.
Well, how about spending the rest of your life in your room?
I'm sorry.
Someplace safe, huh? He's at his grandfather's house, isn't he? Couldn't stay away from that stupid computer, I
It's
bet.
not stupid.
Oh, thank you.
How'd you figure that out?
Oh, I get a lot of practice around here. And you can think about that as you spend the rest of the day up in your room. Now.
Yes, Mr. Myers, you may approach the bench.
I'm very sorry, Your Honor, but due to urgent business, my client is unable to attend the hearing today.
I hope you have a more substantial excuse than that, Mr. Myers. What kind of business?
A family business, Your Honor. An illness in the family, to be
Wait,
exact.
who did he say
Mrs.
exactly?
Mason, please. Be more specific, Mr. Myers.
My client's brother, Your Honor, Mr. Preston Carpenter of Chicago.
And what is the nature of the illness?
A stroke, Your Honor.
And how long will the petitioner be away?
Well, he couldn't be sure, but at least a few days. If the court please, Your Honor, my client requests that the hearing not be postponed, but proceed without it.
That is not something the petitioner decides, Mr. Myers. Mr. Webster, what are your feelings on this matter?
Well, Your Honor, I would like to have just a few minutes to confer with my client, if I may.
Of
Thank
course.
you. Something fishy is going on here.
Daddy hasn't even spoken to Uncle Preston in almost 2 years, Harold. I mean, not since he lost the shipping company back in Chicago.
This stroke, do you think it's possible?
Possible, yes, but the truth is, I think it's more likely he had real business to attend to, and that is so typical of him.
Or maybe it's something else.
Okay, so what should we do then?
I think this could work in our favor. Judge Sawyer's already unhappy. Your father's absence will make your testimony have more impact, and if things go well, by this afternoon, I'll be doing my summation. That'll have more impact without Charles here,
Well,
too.
let's do it then. I think we should.
Counselor, let's get on with it.
Yes, I'm sorry, Your Honor. We feel that since Mr. Myers' client can't be here, we wouldn't want to delay the proceedings any further. We'll waive motion for postponement.
Very well. However, I want you to know how unhappy I am about your client's absence, Mr. Myers.
Yes, Your Honor, please let me assure you that this decision was very difficult for my client to make. He deeply regrets not being able to be here today.
What's wrong? This man is lying.
Mr. Webster, you may call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, we would like to call Ione Redland.
Bailiff, call Ione Redland. And gentlemen, let's move this case along today, please.
Thank you, Ms. Redland. You've been very helpful. Your Honor, I have no more questions.
Mr. Myers?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Redland? Now, about this trip that Miriam Mason took to Canada the time she ran away to her mother, would you say that there was a great deal of pressure on her at that time?
A great deal, yes.
And the time that she ran away from her father, was there a great deal of pressure involved in that situation as well?
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Redland, you've never run away from your problems, have you?
Objection, Your Honor. That kind of question's irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, Mr. Redland, Mr. Webster's questioning just now showed you to be a strongly supportive person, someone who's overcome a great deal in her life, and someone who faces challenges head on. Would you say that Mrs. Mason is as strong a person as you are?
Miriam gets her strength from the same source as mine, Jesus Christ.
Well, that's all well and good, Mrs. Redland, but that doesn't really answer my question. Would you say that Miriam Mason would be able to withstand the same kind of pressures that you're able to? Does she have the same kind of strengths that you have?
Yes.
Really? Have you ever been confined to a psychiatric institution?
No.
Have you ever run away from home?
No.
Have you ever been declared an unfit mother?
No, but...
Thank you very much, Mrs. Redland. No further questions, Your Honor.
I'm here for Eric.
I beg your pardon.
Excuse me. Eric!
Young woman, you leave this house this instant.
Believe me, I don't intend staying here 1 minute longer than I have to. Eric?
Eric is not here.
Oh, save it, honey. I know for a fact he is. Eric!
You leave this house or I'll call the police.
Mrs. Lucas, did you call me?
No, but an angry caller, Redland, didn't you get down here right this instant or you pay the consequences?
You have no right to speak to the boy that way.
I have every right. He was left in my care and he's my responsibility. By the way, you're a lousy liar.
Jimmy told you.
No, he didn't, but he should have. You know, neither of you are too old to get a spanking.
Oh, don't you dare lay a finger on that boy.
If you want to be treated like a grown-up, then you should act like one.
Sorry, Mrs. Redland.
Good. Now we'll talk more about it in the car.
Mrs. Lucas?
that's a business associate of Mr. Carpenter's.
A business associate upstairs. Isn't Mr. Carpenter supposed to be in court?
I'll trust you to mind your own business. Goodbye, Master Eric.
Miss Mason, do you think the court was correct when it labeled you an unfit mother 2 years ago?
Yes, I hate to admit it, but I wasn't a good mother back then.
What kind of mother do you think you are now?
Objection, Your Honor. What kind of mother Mrs. Mason is now is for you to decide, not her.
Sustained.
What are your feelings about motherhood now?
Well, I think that discovering what it means to be a mother has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life.
Do you love your son?
Oh, yes.
Your father claims that you don't.
Well, that's just because he doesn't understand what it is I'm trying to show Eric and why I want things to be different for Eric than they were for me.
And what are you trying to teach your son?
That what a person is far more important than what you can give him or can't give him. Now, my father went to great lengths to explain all of the advantages I had on my life, and it was true. I was constantly showered with gifts, and I went to the best schools, and I always wore the finest clothes. But I would have gladly given all of that up for something as simple as time alone with him. And I really think that that's all I was trying to show him all those years with my negative behavior.
How often did your father see you when you were a child?
Well, I figured that out once when I was away at school. All of the time I was growing up, I saw him on the average of 10 minutes a week.
Objection, Your Honor. These are the calculations of an angry adolescent. It can't be shown that...
Overruled. When you get right down to it, Mr. Myers, there's no way your client's claims about the respondent's childhood can be proved either, except that he was under oath when he made them. And Mrs. Mason, I'll remind you of the same thing.
Oh, of course, Your Honor, of course.
You were saying?
Yes, well, I'm afraid that my father is going to do the same thing all over again with Eric. I mean, look, here we are in court fighting for Eric, and he's away on business. Now, if this isn't important to him, I don't know what will be.
Your Honor, I have to object again. That is a highly inflammatory statement. As I have already stated to the court, my client deeply regrets his absence today. However, it has no bearing on how he will treat his grandson or how he feels about young Eric.
Your Honor, I think that my client has made a valid point here, and that this is highly indicative of Charles Carpenter's typical behavior. It's a reasonable statement.
I'm going to sustain that, but I am still very unhappy with your petitioner's absence.
Ms. Mason, has your father exhibited any of the behavior with Eric that he did with you when you were a child?
Oh, yes. Within just a few days of our arrival back from England, he bought Eric thousands of dollars worth of video equipment.
My goodness, what would that include?
Well, there was a computer, a videotape player, television, dozens of game cartridges and video cassettes, and there was something called a laser disc player.
Did he buy all of this stuff in one shopping trip?
Yes, yes, indeed. In fact, he boasted that he walked into the store and bought it all within less than half an hour.
He must love Eric an awful lot to buy him all that stuff.
But that's just it. He uses things as a replacement for himself.
Objection, Your Honor. Of course Mrs. Mason makes statements like this. She is trying to get...
Mr. Myers, the respondent's claims and tone are not significantly different from your client's when he testified. Overruled. Continue, Mrs. Mason.
Your Honor, I am not against wealth and possessions, but I definitely believe that a child should be taught their proper perspective. I was not taught that perspective by my father, and every action he took with Eric showed me that history was just repeating itself.
Ms. Mason, a great deal has been made about the change that occurred in you within the past year. How do you account for that change?
Well, when I was in the hospital, I started reading the Bible. And I discovered that God is real. And that He would like us to live our lives a certain way for our own benefit. And so I started to try to make changes in my life accordingly.
And have you tried to patch things up with your father?
Yes. Many times, in fact, as recently as last week.
And how did he react then?
The same as always. He just insisted that I give him free rein with Eric.
I'm not sure I understand. You mean that he wants you to relinquish your rights as a mother?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is leading the witness.
Sustained.
Can you tell me what you think your father meant by free rein?
He told me that I could live in the same house, but that I could have nothing to say as to how my son was raised.
He'd deny a mother the right to have access to her own son? Well, Your Honor, I don't have any more questions.
I'd really like to stay, but I'm afraid I've got to get back to the hospital, Ione.
Oh, Terry, God bless you for your time. And I'm sure your testimony is going to be of considerable help to Miriam.
I hope so.
Oh, thank Ben for me again, please. He went in and out of here so fast I didn't have time to say hello.
Sure. Say, you will keep him in your prayers, won't you? Things could get a little rough for him.
I surely will, Terry.
Okay. Thanks, Ione. God bless you. I'll see you.
Okay.
Mrs. Mason, have you ever been employed?
Yes.
As what?
I was a part-time clerk at the Office of Planning and Development in Kingsley.
Uh-huh. And for how long?
Approximately 3 months.
Where else have you worked, Mrs. Mason?
Well, I was sort of a receptionist for my father at one point.
And how long did you last at that job?
About 4 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm. So could you please tell the court the other places you've worked?
Those are the only jobs I've ever had.
Now wait, you're saying that you have worked a total of 4 months in your entire life?
Yes.
I see. What is your source of income right now?
I don't have one.
Uh-huh. So, do you contribute anything to the running of the Redland household?
Well, I help Mrs. Redland with the housework, the dishes, the cleaning, dusting.
But you've never compensated Mrs. Redland monetarily for your room and board.
Not since I haven't been working, no.
And what happens if your boy Eric needs things? How are they paid for?
Well, so far, nothing has come up.
And if it does?
Well, I guess I would...
Mrs. Mason, have you sought employment since you and your son Eric returned from England?
No, but my father...
Please speak up, Mrs. Mason.
I said no!
Thank you. So, when you removed your son from your father's house, and please remember that you are under oath here, Mrs. Mason. Since that time, have you seriously considered getting a job?
This has taken...
Just yes or no, Mrs. Mason.
No.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Webster, you may redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. I only have one question. Ms. Mason, a great deal has been said here, and a great deal has been lost in the shuffle. Would you please tell the court why you want to fight to retain your son?
Because I love him. I don't want him to grow up like I did. It took me 31 years to become an adult. And I'm not proud of what I was, but I did face up to it, and I changed. And through that experience, I realized that I'm responsible for helping to shape the kind of person, the kind of adult my son will become. Now, I'd like to point out that my father has never once taken any responsibility for the way he raised me. He never has. In fact, according to him, all of his actions were just pure and blameless. And I'd also like to point out that Mr. Myers took great pains to show that I have no visible means of support, which is true, but I promise you, Your Honor, that will change. But what he didn't point out was that since I moved Eric out, my father has never once expressed any concern over Eric's basic needs. Now, that just indicates two things to me. One, he knows those needs are being met, which they are, and which makes that entire line of questioning quite silly. Or two, his concern for Eric is just proportional to the amount of control that he has over him.
Objection, Your Honor. Are you really going to let her go on like this? This is pure conjecture on her part.
Mr. Myers, I'm going to remind you once more that Mrs. Mason has a right to respond to the serious charges that have been claimed against her. Overruled. However, please refrain from drawing any more conclusions, Mrs. Mason.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. If I could, please, just let me keep my son. I finally know what it means to be a mother. I do, and please, don't say to me that it's too late for a person to change.
We'll adjourn for lunch and reconvene here at 2 p.m. sharp, at which time both sides will be prepared to give their summation.
All rise.
I'm sorry, Harold. I think I did everything you asked me not to.
Oh, no, Miriam, you did fine.
How do you think we stand then?
Oh, I wouldn't know about that. I do know one thing, though. I'd feel a whole lot easier if I knew where Charles really was.